And since I believed in his vision, I did what any patriotic, prayerful citizen and a supportive relative would do. I transferred my vote from Westlands Primary to Embakasi Central. Not only that, I even convinced others to move with me. After all, numbers matter, both in elections and in camp meetings. Now, if you understand Kenyan politics, you know this truth. Nominations are the real election. If you win a ticket of the dominant party in your area, then the general election is just a Thanksgiving service. If you win the nominations, even your opponents start calling you Mheshimiwa early. So confidence was high. According to my relative, ground ilikuwa imesema ni yeye. Hii ilikuwa imeenda. And since nobody likes supporting a losing candidate, his self-assurance gave me the impetus to wake up very early on nomination day. I reached the polling station feeling very patriotic and joined the queue. When my turn came, with an unerring certitude, I handed over my ID to the IEBC clerk so they could confirm that I am Kenyan, I am alive, and that I am not an illegal immigrant from Uganda. The clerk started with the electronic register. She searched again, and nothing. My name could not be found. She said, "Let me check the manual register." Church, that register was flipped like the Bible during Sabbath school. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, my name was not there. At this point, my Adventist patience expired. I started behaving like a normal Kenyan. Wanatuibia. This is voter suppression. Do you know who I am? People in the queue started staring at me. You know that look? The one that says, we don't know you and honestly we do not care. I almost said, do you know that I went to Alliance? Then I remembered I did not. The clerk was nonchalantly unbothered. He looked at me calmly and patronizingly said, "You could be the president's son, but if your name is not in the register, you are not voting." I was politely but firmly ordered to leave. And being wise and reading the room, I left before it became an eviction. That day, church, I did not exercise my democratic right to vote. I left the polling station discountenanced, discombobulated, and my flabbers unceremoniously gasted. That's when the Holy Spirit impressed upon me the words chronicled in the book of Revelation, the 20th chapter, verse 12, which says, "And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books." And verse 14 says, "And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast in the lake of fire." As it was on that voting day, where the books were opened, so shall it be on the judgment day. For not being in the register, I was disgracefully kicked out of the polling station. So shall it be for those whose names shall not be found in the book of life. They shall be condemned to eternal damnation. On that day, no one will be arguing with the angel at the desk. You will not say, "But I was baptized." but I kept the Sabbath. But I was vegetarian, for even Jesus foretold that not all who call me Lord, Lord shall enter the kingdom, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. The book of Luke, the 10th chapter, and verse 17, records the account of the 70 disciples who had been sent out by Jesus, who returned triumphantly. And verse 17 says, then the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. But Jesus quickly sent their theology back to factory setting in verse 20, when he told them, nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your name are written in heaven. That's why I love the words of that old hymn, is my name written there. Lord, I care not for riches, neither silver nor gold. I'll make sure of heaven, I would enter the fold. In the book of thy kingdom, with its pages so fair, tell me, Jesus, my Savior, is my name written there? Is my name written there? On the page wide and fair, in the book of thy kingdom, is my name written there? There will be surprises in heaven. Many will be in heaven who their neighbors supposed would never enter there. Surprise number 2, there are those who appeared as a sure bet to make it, based on their public pronouncements and open acts of piety in the eyes of men, but they will not be there. And the last surprise is that you, my brother and sister, against all odds, you'll find yourself there. But today my prayer is simple. May no one leave this sanctuary assuming, guessing, or hoping. Do not leave this sanctuary hoping for a surprise. Hope has never been a strategy. May we live with the assurance that through a daily walk with Christ, that our names are written in the book of life. Because on that day, saints, no tantrums will be entertained. No explanations will be accepted. Only names in the register will matter. So my question to you is your name written there? Happy Sabbath, church. Happy day. I reckon that I am not new to this congregation. I was here last year at the invitation of Brian Busire. Brian Busire. And what a difference 1 year can make. Because the last time I was here, Brian was a single man. And from our conversations, his prospects were rather bleak. And that is putting it mildly. But I think he finally discovered the words of Genesis 2 verse 18. After God had created everything, he said everything was good except one thing. He said it is not good for a man to be alone. So Brian did the needful. This time I come at the invitation of yet another Brian. Brian Nyakundi. But unlike Brian Busire, Nyakundi has maintained status quo. And I was having a conversation with him earlier today. He said that the day he marries, even the blind will see. But I wish to encourage him in the words of Matthew 22 verse 30. Which says that for in resurrection we will neither marry nor given in marriage, for we shall be like the angels of God in heaven. Ndoa ni ya hapa ulimwengu. Kwa hivyo fanya hima, while it is called today. But Brian has always told me, you know, he's a glass half full kind of guy. He has always told me that better it is to be single and happy than married and miserable. A school of thought that I am inclined to agree with. And I am glad to be back in this wonderful church. And Brian, just in case you want to look for a good testimony that marriage is good, especially for men, just look at Bundi Marita. Yeah, see how his life has changed. You know, a very serious guy, right? Good. And while I was here, like Brian, I was a husband to one wife. And I'm glad to report that indeed I'm still a husband to the same wife. And I came with my wife. And to borrow the words of Bundi, Bundi, where are you, Bundi? She's the Duchess of Bomachoge. So I will request my wife to just stand and wave wherever she is. Yeah, I picked Kisses' finest. I was reading a study which listed the tribes in Kenya with the highest IQ. And at the top of that list was the Kisii community. They had the highest IQ, followed closely by the Luo community, and then the third was the Kikuyu community, where I come from. And so I decided if I combine number 3 and number 1, the future is definitely bright. You don't want to take risks. Yes. Plus, I also understand that the quickest locally available way of getting an American green card, just marry a Kisii. If you know, you know. And also my sister-in-law is here, Kemunto. Kindly also stand and wave to the congregation. And if you see your sister-in-law coming to where you are, then you are not doing badly. And again, I'm glad to be here. The title of our sermon today, Better Than Singapore, A Journey to Paradise. Better than Singapore, A Journey to Paradise. And our key text is Revelation 21 and verse 4. But before we get to the subject matter, I will request the choristers to come up and to help us sing the first stanza of hymn 449. Never part again. And I love the previous singers who have sung. They have been aligned with the theme today of our journey to paradise. I will request the church, let's stand as we sing the first stanza and the chorus of hymn number 449.
Let's sing together.
There is a land of pure delight, where bliss eternal reigns. Infinite days exclude the night. Lord, for work fit for the angels, thou hast entrusted but a feeble sinner. Therefore, dear Lord, my prayer is that may I decrease as you increase. May they hear you and not the voice of a sinner, is my prayer in Jesus' name. And let the church say, amen. Better than Singapore, a journey to paradise. 30th of April, 2014 is a day permanently stenciled in my mental sheet. It was the day I experienced something that was a childhood aspiration for the very first time. I boarded an airplane. There's a special excitement that comes with first-time experiences. I was not only excited because it was my maiden flight, but also because of the destination. I was headed to a city that had become the talk of town. Every travel agent was selling it, and they still are today. The narrative was simple. The Emiratis had turned a desert into paradise. My travel agent did not help matters. He painted a picture of heaven. Wild Wadi, a hub for water sports where water defies gravity. Ferrari World, an exhibition of human ingenuity. Burj Khalifa, the tallest structure mankind has ever dared to build. Burj Al Arab, the so-called 7-star hotel with gold finishes. In fact, you cannot excite some of those occupants by telling them that in heaven we shall walk on streets of gold. They already do. And a desert safari, and brethren, it sounded like Eden with Wi-Fi. The destination city, of course, was Dubai. I looked forward to that day the way an expectant mother looks forward to holding her child, or the way the heavens look forward to receiving a repentant sinner. I was excited to finally use aviation vocabulary. Check in, touchdown, ETA. These are not words you use in a matatu. You don't check into a matatu. There is no ETA in a matatu. And if the conductor ever says we are about to touch down, that does not inspire excitement. Inspires terror. Now, when you are a first-time flyer, you try very hard to act normal. As if you do this every other weekend. But by their fruits, you shall know them. I arrived at the airport 6 hours early. That alone gave me away. When I reached international departures, I asked the attendant, stage ya kwenda Dubai iko wapi? She laughed and pointed to a counter and said, ile ndio stage, na huyu amekaa hapo ndiye conductor. I later learned that this was professional level sarcasm. After what felt like 40 days and 40 nights, check-in finally opened. Then came the security check. Removing my belt was not enough. They wanted my shoes too. Thankfully that day I wore clean matching socks without any visible aftermarket ventilation. I was still single then. At the counter they asked if I had anything sharp to declare. I asked whether my brain counted. It wasn't my fault they had started the sarcasm. I finally boarded and took my seat by the window. Economy class, of course. Business class is preserved for the senior civil servants and corporate honchos. Once seated, a curtain was drawn to separate the economy, the business class, the haves and the have-nots. Kind of reminded me of the sanctuary. You know, Adventists, you see Adventism in everything. Those who are in the economy, that was the outer court. Those in the business class, the most holy place, and a curtain to boot. But it's not like the business class arrived before the rest of us. The captain came on the PA system, and after the usual pleasantries, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts as we expect some turbulences before reaching a comfortable cruising altitude." My seatmate explained to me that turbulence is like potholes in the sky. I could not wrap my mind around that concept. The journey to paradise. The takeoff was smooth, and the journey to paradise had begun in earnest. The excitement in the plane was palpable, especially among the group that I was traveling with. We were all paradise bound. The verse echoing in my mind was 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 9. "Eye has not seen, nor the ear heard, nor has it entered the heart of man the things that God has prepared for them that love him." I was already there in my spirit. Soon, meals were served. When the air hostess asked what I wanted, I declined politely. I erroneously thought it was for sale. I was saving my money for paradise. My seatmate, however, ordered everything on the menu. He believed in the N in the acronym New Start, but had never met the T for temperance. He even took alcohol. I wondered how much higher he wanted to go. We were already cruising at 30,000 feet. That was high enough, but not according to him. All was going well until it wasn't. Something happened. You know, nothing teaches perspective like flying. When you're down here and somebody comes and says, "Brian, I have a small problem," you will most likely ask them, "What's the problem? How can I help you?" But when you are 40,000 feet, and then the captain says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a small problem," that's when you know that small is relative. About an hour in, the captain took to the intercom once more. His voice steady as a compass, calm as a seasoned sky, announcing that in a few minutes, due to the bad weather, we were to expect some turbulence. He said it with a casual calm, as one would mention passing clouds, and consequently turned on the seatbelt sign. Beloved, what followed for the next 30 or so minutes made me realize that the captain had a rare ability to understate. It was a period of severe turbulence. Brothers and sisters, excitement among the passengers evaporated faster than December salary. The aircraft was being tossed like a testimony in a camp meeting. My intestines were doing missionary work inside my body. For a first-timer, scared doesn't begin to encapsulate how I felt then. Even seasoned travelers lost their composure. People screamed. Some cursed. Others, like myself, prayed. I told God very clearly, "Not today, Lord. Not today." I felt completely powerless. My seatmate, now heavily intoxicated, started shouting, asking why people are screaming. At that moment, I struggled with Christian love. Yet, despite the terror, there is one thing that never crossed my mind: getting out of the plane. No matter how bad it was inside, it was infinitely worse outside. We were 33,000 feet above the Indian Ocean. To step out meant certain death and missing paradise altogether. Beloved, no matter how rough the flight gets, never step out of the plane to paradise. I hope you're following me. Through it all, the pilot's voice remained calm and steady. Ladies and gentlemen, do not be afraid, he said. We have been through this times without number before, and we have always landed safely. There was something reassuring in his voice. He sounded like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. There was no tremor in his voice, in his tone, only the measured confidence of a man who had mastered both altitude and fear. His words carried the calm certainty of someone who knew that the destination had already been secured. Now, you know, there are three types of turbulences. There are those that scare passengers. Those are routine. There are those that scare the cabin crew. Those are serious. And then there are turbulences that scare pilots. And when that happens, you better pray in tongues, because you are in trouble. But this pilot showed no fear. His voice flowed through the cabin, unhurried, unshaken, acknowledging the disturbance while anchoring every heart in assurance. He did not deny the storm. He simply announced it with the confidence of a man still firmly in command. It was the kind of voice that steadies hands and quiets imaginations. Eventually, the turbulences ceased. Amen. Because no turbulence lasts forever. It reminds me of this Persian king who had gone to war. And he lost the battle and went back to his palace, discountenanced, discombobulated, and his flabbers unceremoniously gasted. And while he was there, he called his wise men. And he gave them an assignment. He told them, gentlemen, I want you to make me something that when I am sad, it will make me happy. And when I am happy, it will make me sad. And they got to work. And after many days of brainstorming and thought showering, one young wise man suggested something. He said, let's make the king a ring. But on that ring, we shall inscribe these 4 words. This too shall pass. And so they did. And they handed the king the ring. So whenever the king had won any war and he was making merry, he would look down on that ring and it would read, this too shall pass. He would be sad. And when he was sad, once again he would read the ring and he would say, this too shall pass. For no turbulence lasts forever. So ladies and gentlemen, never make permanent decisions based on a temporary condition. Because the condition will change. But some decisions are irreversible. Whatever turbulence you are currently undergoing, it will pass. That's an assurance. It will pass. Don't jump out of the plane just because of a turbulence. The turbulence ceased, and 4 hours later, we landed safely in the tourist's paradise. And brethren, that place was everything that I had imagined to be, and then some. It was truly paradise, far beyond what I had imagined. The destination was worth every moment of turbulence we endured on the journey to get there. Better than Singapore, the journey to paradise. Beloved, we are on a journey to paradise. As the hymn we've just sung so succinctly captures it, there is a land of pure delight where bliss eternal reigns. Infinite day excludes the night, and pleasures banish pain. We are traveling to Emmanuel's land, and we soon shall hear the trumpet sound. And soon we shall with Jesus reign and never, never part again. Beloved, we are on a journey to a land infinitely better than Singapore. A land with pearl-wrought entrances, quiet with the weight of everlasting welcome. Gold beneath the feet, no longer an idol, but a testimony. The church is a plane, and he who bought mankind with the price of his own blood, Jesus, is the captain of this flight. Our captain has not promised us an easy and turbulence-free ride. We will face turbulences from time to time, and other times we will not even like some of our fellow passengers. It is all part of the journey to paradise. The pen of inspiration tells us that the path to paradise is narrow and inconvenient. It is a path of conflict, of trial, of tribulation and suffering. Our captain, Jesus Christ, has hid nothing from us in regard to the battles we are to fight. He opens the map before us and shows us the way. Strive, he says, to enter in at the straight gate. For many, I say unto you, will seek to enter it and shall not be able. The apostles echo the word of Christ in Acts 14, verse 22, that says, we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom. The aircraft on that maiden flight was a Boeing 777. Very strongly built and can withstand turbulence safely. The aircraft structures are certified to endure forces much greater than those encountered in normal or even severe turbulence without damage. It's uncomfortable for the passengers, but not a threat to the plane's integrity. And so is a church. For it is built on a rock that cannot be shaken. As it is recorded in Matthew 16, verse 18, the reassuring words of Jesus when he spoke to Peter and he said, and I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall, mandatory, not prevail against it. That is a sure promise that no turbulence shall overtake this plane to paradise. I am acutely cognizant that many have been bitterly disappointed by the church. And some have abandoned the church because they came expecting to find the perfect and the converted, only to find thugs in suits and with natural hair and no makeup. They expected a sanctuary of holiness and instead encountered humanity, broken, flawed, and at times cruel. And their hearts quietly walked away. Some walked into the church seeking healing, but left carrying deeper wounds inflicted by those meant to reflect Christ. Some came to church searching for saints, only to discover wounded people who sometimes wound others. And the disappointment became heavier than their faith. They came hungry for grace and were served judgment. They came for healing, but were handed scars. For some, the cross was lifted high on Sabbath and then weaponized for the rest of the week. Brothers and sisters, I want to make it plain this Sabbath morning that the church is not a museum of saints, but a hospital for sinners. As it is written in Mark The second chapter, verse 17, when Jesus said that it is not the healthy who seek a doctor, but the sick. And this hospital has no VIP wing for the righteous. Everyone is here because something is broken. In this hospital, some patients limp in, others are wheeled in, and a few insist they are fine while clearly bleeding. In this hospital, none of us is a visiting consultant. We are all patients in gowns trying to hide our mess. We are all under treatment, though some of us just keep skipping our medication and wondering why we are not getting better. Everyone here has a file, a history, and at least one condition we would rather not discuss in public. In this hospital, the sickest patients are often the ones walking around diagnosing everyone else. Our confidence must never be anchored on our fellow patients, but on our great physician. That notwithstanding, the church, with all its imperfections, still remains God's appointed agency for the salvation of man. The church is composed of enfeebled and defective members who constantly need warning and counsel, yet it is still the object of Christ's supreme regard. I countenance when Noah and his children entered the ark in the company of beasts and were there for many days. It is not recorded that God ever altered the biological processes of these animals. So it is fair to assume that the animals passed stool, and being in an enclosed space, save for any heavenly fragrance, the smell in the ark must have been unbecomingly pungent. It must have been the smelliest place on earth, I dare say. Nevertheless, it remained the safest place to be at that point in time. To leave the ark, damnation was assured. The ark is a microcosm of the church today. You may have come expecting a garden of tranquility, only to find a zoo filled with beasts. Yet, it is still the apple of God's eye. When turbulence shook the aircraft, when the cabin trembled, when suspended between heaven and earth, rocked by restless winds, we floated one moment, then fell the next, dancing unwillingly with the tempest. The passengers, who were regular flyers, did not study the faces of fellow travelers for assurance. They listened to the steady voice of the captain. In the same way, Christ is the captain of the church, guiding his vessel through unseen storms. The church may tremble, and some passengers may panic, cry, or even lose their calm. But the safety of the journey has never rested on the passengers. It rests on the one at the controls. When the church is shaken by failure, by conflict, by disappointment, do not fix your eyes on frightened passengers. Fix them on Christ, our captain. He has not lost control. He has not abandoned the cockpit. When faith is tested and hearts are unsettled, our confidence must not be in fragile human behavior, but in the faithful voice of Jesus, who still speaks peace in the midst of every shaking and promises to bring his people safely home. I want to bring this to a conclusion with the account of a 19th century tight-rope walker by the name Charles Blondin. Charles Blondin decided to undertake his most daring adventure yet, to walk on a tight rope across the Niagara Falls. He stood on the edge of Niagara Falls, Beneath him roared thousands of tons of raging waters. Mist rose like smoke. The wind howled, and stretched across that deadly gap was nothing but a thin rope. With a balancing pole in his hand, he walked across, back and forth, back and forth. Blindfolded, he walked. On stilts, he walked, even pushing a wheelbarrow across. All this to the cheers of an enamored crowd of spectators. Then one day he asked the crowd, "Do you believe I can carry a man on my shoulders across this rope?" They shouted, "Yes, Charlie, yes, you can." No one doubted that he could. Then he asked a second question. "Then who will get on my back, that I may carry them across?" That's where they drew the line. Not a single soul dared to volunteer. Many believed in Blondin, but none was willing to climb on his back. They applauded on the riverbanks, but none had the faith enough to step on the rope with him. But suddenly, a man stepped out of the crowd and was willing to be carried by Blondin across the raging waters of Niagara Falls. And indeed, he was safely carried across. Upon disembarking, he was quizzed by all and sundry as to how he had mastered the courage to take such a risk. And he said, "I have watched Blondin cross again and again and again. I have seen him steady in the wind, calm in the storm, focused on the raging waters. I have seen him before, and he has never failed. That's why I could trust him with my life." It turns out that this man was Charles Blondin's manager, who he had traveled with on all his shows. Brothers, I want to commend to you a man greater than Charles Blondin, the man, Jesus Christ. Blondin crossed over raging waters. Jesus walked on it. Blondin carried one man. Jesus carried the world. Blondin risked his life. Jesus gave his life. Blondin could fail. Jesus never will. Like the crowd at Niagara Falls, some of us are clapping for Jesus from the crowd. We sing, we shout, we attend. But like the spectators, we are still standing on the ground. Today, Jesus is not asking for your applause. He's asking for your surrender. Not, "Lord, I'll walk if the rope is thick." Not, "Lord, I'll trust if the winds stop." But, "Lord, I'm getting on your shoulders in the storm, in the fear, in the unknown, because you are carrying me to glory." And when we reach the other side, not by our strength, not by our wisdom, not by our goodness, but by his grace, we will say, "Jesus carried me all the way home." And when we get there, he shall fulfill his promise, recorded in our key text of Revelation 21 and verse 4. "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away." Paradise will be worth all the pain that we have to endure to get there. So, press on, And again I say, press on.